Hi guys, it's Mrs. Williams. Okay, so today we're going to look at factoring trinomials where the leading coefficient is not 1. Okay, so this is going to take a little more work, so you need to make sure you're ready. Make sure you've got your notes, you've checked your tech, and all distractions are gone. Okay? Ready, set? Here we go. So there's at least 2 methods to do these. The first one is the box method. I know a lot of you like the box method when we were multiplying, so let's see if you like the box method for factoring. So we're going to factor 3x squared plus x minus 2. So the first thing we do is we write the leading term in the upper left-hand corner. So the first thing we do is we write the leading coefficient 3x squared here. And we write the constant negative 2 down here. So notice I took the sign with it, okay? That's important. So I did bring that sign with me. All right, now next step, we're going to multiply the leading coefficient and the constant. So our leading coefficient is 3 times that negative 2, that would be negative 6, okay? So we know that our numbers are going to multiply to negative 6. We also know that they have to add to b, which in this case is 1 or 1x. Okay, if you want to put the x there, that's okay. So we need to find our factors. So I'm going to make our little factor and sum table here. Okay, now remember, if we're multiplying to negative 6, our signs are going to be different. And because they're adding to a positive 1x, we know the bigger number has to be positive. So we need a negative as the small number and a positive as the big number. So all right, the numbers that multiply to negative 6 would be a negative 1 and a positive 6 and a negative 2 and a positive 3. And if I add them up, negative 1 plus 6 is positive 5. And negative 2 plus 3 is positive 1. There it is. There's my magic pair. Negative 2 and positive 3. And I'm going to put a little x with them. And you'll see why I put an x with them in a second. Okay, because notice we want them to add up to this positive 1x. So the negative 2x plus 3x will add up to the 1x. All right, so we've done the first 3 steps. Now the next step 4 is to write these numbers times x in the empty 2 boxes. So remember, we had already written a 3x squared here, and we had written a minus 2 here. Now we're writing our 2 magic numbers, and it doesn't matter where you put them. The negative 2 and the positive 3. Okay, it doesn't matter which order you place them in. It'll work out. Step 5, we're going to factor out the greatest common factor of each row and column to create our factors. So here, we're going to factor the greatest common factor out right here in this row, 3x squared plus 3x. What do 3x squared and 3x have in common? They have a 3 and an x in common. Now let's look at the bottom row, a negative 2x and a negative 2. What do they have in common? They have negative 2 in common. Now, not only do we do this to our rows, we also do this in the columns. What do 3x squared and negative 2x have in common? They only have an x in common. What do 3x and negative 2 have in common? They don't have anything in common, do they? Well, if you don't see anything, the only number that divides into 3 and negative 2 is 1, right? It's 1. So there we've pulled out our common factors. Now I am going to give you a little warning or a hint here. And this is a big clue for down the road, okay? Be sure when you factor out the GCF that the bigger x term is positive. If it's not, factor out a negative 1. Otherwise, factor out a negative 1. And we'll do a problem like that, okay, to make sure you understand that. Now, the last thing we have to do is to write our factors. And we look down this column and we put them in the parentheses. 3x and a negative 2, so we write minus 2. And then across the top, we have x plus 1. That's it. You did it. We factored. We factored when the leading a trinomial when the leading coefficient was not 1. Now, I'm going to take that same example, 3x squared plus x minus 2, and this time we're going to factor by splitting the middle term, or some people say we do it by factoring by grouping. Okay? Now, it starts out the same way. We multiply the leading coefficient and the constant. 3 times negative 2, that's negative 6. Okay? Starts out the same way. So we know we want these numbers to multiply to negative 6. We also know, because I am factoring, that we want them to add to positive 1x. We're going to make our little factor sum table. Notice this is exactly what we did on the first page. That same box, right? Exactly the same. We had a negative 6, which means the signs have to be different, but because they add to a positive, with smaller numbers negative, bigger numbers positive, and we did this on the front. The factors were negative 1 and a positive 6, a negative 2 and a positive 3. Their sums were 5 and 1, and this was our matching pair, so we had a negative 2x here and a positive 3x here. Okay, so we found our two numbers that multiply to AC and add to B. Now, this is where the method changes a little bit. I'm going to go back. I'm going to recopy the original factor. It was the trinomial, 3x squared plus x minus 2. You ready? Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to rewrite, replace, and rewrite. So, we rewrite the 3x squared. We replace, actually we did purple, this positive x with these two pieces. And it doesn't matter what order you put it in, but I'm going to kind of put that plus 3x first, and then a negative 2x. And then we rewrite the constant negative 2. So what we did is we replaced this plus x with positive 3x minus 2x. And if you do that, combine like terms, positive 3x minus 2x, that is plus x. We just broke it up, okay? We just broke it up. Now, next step. We're going to group the first two terms. So I'm going to group 3x squared plus 3x, and then I'm going to put a little plus, and I'm going to group the negative 2x minus 2. Okay? Now, we're going to factor out the GCF from each group. So take a look in here. What do 3x squared and 3x have in common? Oh, okay. They have a 3 in common. They also have an x in common. Now, if I divide out that 3x, that's going to leave me with an x. And 3x divided by 3x, that's plus 1. I'm going to keep that plus. And now, I'm going to look here. What does negative 2x and a minus 2 have in common? They have a negative 2 in common. And if I divide that out, negative 2x divided by negative 2 is just x. And negative 2 divided by negative 2, be careful, is positive 1. Now the last step is to factor out the greatest common factor binomial. See this addition sign that's between them? Do you see something before the addition sign that's also after the addition sign? I do. I see x plus 1. And if I take out this x plus 1 from each term, what is left? That would leave me with a 3x in the first part. I've got my red plus sign. And then in the back, I've got a minus 2. So you know what? I'm not even going to write the plus. I'm going to write minus 2. And now we are factored. Now remember when I told you it didn't matter which order you put them in? Okay, I want you to trust me on that. So I'm going to go back here. Suppose instead of writing 3x squared plus 3x minus 2x, I wrote 3x squared minus 2x plus 3x minus 2, right? Would this be the same thing if I broke it up this way? Well, yeah, it would. Okay, I'm going to group the first two parts, 3x squared minus 2x plus, and I'm going to group 3x minus 2. Now we would take out our common term. What does 3x squared plus 2x have in common? The only thing they have in common is x. 3x squared divided by x is 3x, minus 2x divided by x just gives us a minus 2, plus, what do 3x and negative 2 have in common? Just 1. And that would leave us with 3x minus 2. Now take a look. Before the addition sign, I have a 3x minus 2, and after it, I have a 3x minus 2. So I'm going to factor that out, and what's left? I'm left with an x plus 1. Are these the same answers? Yes, they are, because multiplication is commutative. It does not matter which one I write first. Okay, so those are the two methods. Now, because there's a lot of steps to them, I want to run through one more of each type, okay? Just really quickly for you. So here we go. Let's factor 12x squared plus 11x plus 2. So the first thing we're going to do, we are going to multiply 12 times 2, that's 24. So we know our numbers are going to multiply to 24, and they're going to add to this positive 11x. Okay, they're going to add to 11x. So now we need to think about our factors and our sums. So let's see, factor, sum, and our signs. We're multiplying to a positive 24, so the signs are the same. They're adding to an 11x, so both signs are going to be positive. That makes this nice. So multiplies to 24. That would be 1 times 24. 2 times 12. I'm just dividing as I go up. 3 goes in 8 times. 4 goes in 6 times. 5 doesn't go in. Okay. Now the sums, we add them up. 1 plus 24 is 25. 2 plus 12 is 14. 3 plus 8 is 11. 4 plus 6 is 10. Which pair adds to our special number 11x? There it is. Okay. Now, we're going to we write our first term, 12x squared up here. We write our last term 2 down here. Okay. Now we're going to take those special two numbers that we found, that 3 and that 8, and we're going to multiply them times x. Doesn't matter where you put them. Let's put the 8 here and the 3 here, right? Because going left to right, it's 3, 8. Does it matter? No, does not matter. All right, now going across. What does 12x squared and 8x have in common? Well, what goes into 12 and 8? That would be 4. And if I look at x squared and x, the smallest power of x would be x to the first. So they have 4x in common. Take a look at 3x plus 2. The only number that goes into 3 and 2 would be 1. And there is no x in common. So we have a factor, 4x plus 1. Now let's go up our columns. What do 3x and 12x squared have in common? Well, what goes into 3 and 12? That would be 3. And if I have x squared and x to the first, they have an x in common. And then if I look at 8x and 2, the number that goes into 8 and 2 would be 2. Now, some people like to write these signs in here so that they remember when it comes time to write the factors down here, it's 3x plus 2. Because if you lose that, then you didn't really factor. Okay, did that help? All right, let's try one with splitting the middle term or factoring by grouping. All right, last problem, I promise. So here we go. 3x squared minus 5x minus 12. We do first times last. 3 times negative 12. That's going to give us negative 36. Okay? So we need two numbers that multiply to negative 36. And remember, I am factoring, so they have to add to that negative 5, or the negative 5x if you prefer. Let's think about our factors and our sum. Now, if we're multiplying to a negative 36, that means our signs are going to be different. And if we're adding to a negative 5, that means that the bigger number has to be negative. So we need a positive and then a negative. So what multiplies to negative 36? That would be 1 in negative 36. 2 goes in negative 18 times. 3 goes in negative 12 times. 4 goes in negative 9 times. 5 does not go into 36. And 6 goes in negative 6 times. Now we're going to add them up. 1 in negative 36 is negative 35. 2 in negative 18 is negative 16. 3 and negative 12 is negative 9. And I know some of you hate the arithmetic. You can use a calculator. It's okay. 4 and negative 9 is negative 5. And 6 and negative 6 add to 0. Now remember, we wanted to add to negative 5x. So here's our pair. A positive 4x and a negative 9x. So now we rewrite 3x squared. We replace that negative 5x with the positive 4x and the negative 9x. Now you know what? I'm going to, just because I like to, I kind of think ahead. See that 3? I'm going to put the 9x, because I know 3 goes into 9. I'm going to put the 9x by the 3. I'm going to put the 4x over here. And then I'm going to rewrite my constant term, negative 12. And again, it does not matter what order you put the negative 9x and the 4 in, as long as that 9 is negative, which I didn't write it first. There we go. Negative. Okay, so that's important. So now we're going to group the first two. We're going to group 3x squared minus 9x, and we're going to group 4x minus 12. Okay, so let's take a look. 3x squared minus 9x, they have a 3 in common and an x. 3x squared divided by 3x is going to give us x. Minus 9x divided by 3x is 3. Now, what do 4x and negative 12 have in common? Oh, 4 goes into 4 and 12, and there's no variable in common. So 4x divided by 4 is x, minus 12 divided by 4 is 3. Now look before and after that addition sign there. What binomial do they have in common? X minus 3. And what's left? If you take out that x minus 3, we have a 3x left here, and then after the addition sign, we had a 4 left here. And lo and behold, you have factored x minus 3 times 3x plus 4. So what do you think, guys? Do you like the factor with the box method, or do you like splitting the middle term, or factor by grouping, whichever way you want to call it, or are you not decided yet? Think about that, okay? And you might need to practice a few before you decide on a method, and you might even change depending on the problem. All right, make sure you make that question for me, and I'll see you guys next class.